They call it the silent death. You don't hear it coming. You don't see the grass move. The only warning you get is the sudden silence of the birds. I thought I was the hunter, tracking a ghost story in the heart of the Sundarbans. I was wrong. I wasn't tracking him. He was hurting me, and when I finally saw those burning amber eyes, I knew I wasn't just in his territory. I was on his menu. Chapter 1. The Whispering Forest. The Sundarbans isn't like any other forest on Earth. It's a shifting maze of mangroves, mud, and tides, where the land disappears twice a day. I'm Elias Thorne, a wildlife photographer, and I had come here to find the scar of a legendary Bengal tiger said to be larger than any recorded male in the last decade. Locals refused to guide me past the buffer zone. They said the scar had a taste for human blood and possessed a supernatural intelligence. I dismissed it as folklore. That was my first mistake. I dropped off a small boat onto the muddy bank at low tide, my boots sinking instantly into the clay. The air was thick, smelling of salt and rotting vegetation. My guide, a trembling fisherman named Raj, wouldn't even look at the trees. "Don't turn your back," he whispered, handing me my gear. "He likes the back of the neck." Then he pushed off, leaving me alone in the suffocating green twilight. For the first 3 hours, the hike was grueling but uneventful. I checked my camera traps, navigating by GPS. But around noon, the atmosphere shifted. The constant drone of cicadas simply stopped. Winded. The hair on my arms stood up. It's a primal instinct, something buried deep in our DNA that screams when an apex predator is near. I scanned the dense wall of Sundari trees. Nothing. Just shadows and twisted roots. I knelt to check a fresh pug mark in the mud. It was massive, easily 8 inches wide, but as I touched the wet clay, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. The water was still seeping into the print. It was fresh, second-soled. Ispon around. Camera raised. The jungle was empty. But then I saw it, 50 yards away, perfectly camouflaged against the orange-brown bark of a dying tree. A pair of eyes blinked. He hadn't just been watching me. He had been waiting for me to bow my head. The scar stepped out, silent as smoke, his massive shoulders rolling with terrifying power. He didn't roar. Just start. Chapter 2. The ambush a tiger doesn't run like a dog or a wolf. It flows. 1 second he was 50 yards away, and the next he was a blur of orange lightning closing the gap. My brain screamed run, but my legs felt like lead. I didn't have a gun, only a flare gun and my camera mount. The tiger launched himself. I threw myself to the right, diving into a tangle of thorny vines. A massive paw, heavy as a sledgehammer, smashed into the spot where my head had been a microsecond before. The sound was sickening, a wet thud against the mud. I scrambled on all fours, ignoring the thorns tearing at my clothes and skin. I could hear him turning. He let out a low, guttural growl that vibrated in my chest cavity. I didn't look back. I sprinted toward a cluster of mangrove roots that looked like a cage. The terrain was my enemy. The mud sucked at my boots, trying to hold me in place for the killer. I could hear the squelch of his paws behind me. He wasn't rushing anymore. He knew he was faster. He was toying with me. I dove into a narrow gap between the roots of a massive banyan tree, squeezing my body into the hollow underneath. Seconds later, his head appeared at the opening. Up close, he was a monster. His face was scarred, one ear torn to scar. He snarled, exposing canines the size of daggers, his hot breath washing over me. He swiped at the opening, his claws raking the wood inches from my face. I pressed myself back against the wet dirt, sobbing silently. I was trapped. Chapter 3. The siege. Time loses meaning when you are being hunted. I lay curled in that root cage for what felt like hours. The tiger didn't leave. Most predators eventually lose interest if they can't reach their prey, but tigers are known for their vindictive patience. He paced back and forth in front of my hiding spot, his tail twitching. Every few minutes, he would stop and choof a sound that seemed almost mocking. The tide was beginning to turn. I realized with horror that the water level in the mangrove swamp was rising. The Sundarbans are tidal. At high tide, this entire floor would be underwater. My sanctuary was about to become a drowning chamber. The water seeped in, cold and salty, soaking my legs. I had to make a choice. Stay and drown, or run and face the beast. I checked my flare gun. I had 2 shots. That was Italiano. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long, sinister shadows. The tiger had settled down about 20 feet away, licking his paws, seemingly relaxed, but his ears swiveled toward me every time I shifted. He knew about the tide, too. He was waiting for the water to flush me out. I needed a distraction. I took a stick and threw it out the far side of the roots. It landed with a splash. The tiger's head snapped toward the noise, and he rose, crouching low. This was my only chance. Chapter 4. The race against the tide. Narrator! I burst out of the opposite side of the roots, screaming to pump adrenaline into my exhausted limbs. The water was already calf-deep, splashing loudly with every step. The tiger reacted instantly. He didn't roar. He just charged. I aimed a flare gun at the ground between us and pulled the trigger. Bang. A blinding red magnesium fire erupted in the twilight. The tiger skid to a halt, snarling and swatting at the sparks. The sudden flash and the hissing noise confused him just enough to buy me 5 seconds. I ran toward the creek where I had been dropped off. The mud was slicker now, covered in water. I slipped, falling face first into the brine. I scrambled up, spitting out mud, expecting to feel teeth on my neck. I glanced back. The tiger had skirted around the flare and was coming again, bounding through the rising water in massive leaps. I saw a sturdy mangrove tree with low-hanging branches about 30 yards ahead. It was my only hope. I didn't have the stamina to outrun him to the riverbank. I lunged for the branch, hauling myself up just as the tiger jumped. His claws caught the heel of my boot, ripping the sole clean off. The force swung me wildly, my grip slipping on the wet bark. I screamed and kicked out, catching him in the nose with my other boot. He fell back into the water with a splash, roaring in frustration. I climbed higher, shaking uncontrollably, until I was 20 feet up. Chapter 5. The Long Night. Narrator. I spent the night in that tree. Below me, the tide rose until the forest floor was a churning ocean. The scar didn't leave immediately. He circled the tree, swimming in the dark water, his eyes reflecting the moonlight like 2 burning coals. He clawed at the trunk, marking it, claiming it owned me. Eventually, the water became too deep even for him, and he swam off toward higher ground, but I didn't dare move until the sun came up and the tide receded. At dawn, a fishing boat engine cut through the silence. I have never heard a more beautiful sound. I waved my shirt, screaming until my voice gave out. They saw me. As the boat pulled away, I looked back at the tree line. There, standing on a raised mound of earth, was the scar. He wasn't chasing. He was just watching. He let out one final roar, a sound that I still hear in my nightmares. I survived the Sundarbans, but a part of me never left that jungle. I learned that day that we are not the masters of this planet. We are just guests, and sometimes we are trespassers. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more survival tales. And remember, in the wild, never turn your back.